we're in the game of high school all the time.
We have an instinct, we have an emotion, and then we have a story.
It's funny, like growing up, what you learn from your parents and what sticks with you.
I feel like they did a really good job with balancing the fact of we're raising 6 kids, make do with what we can, where we can.
I've got a love-hate with Dave Ramsey, dude.
Yes, same.
I'm just so ornery.
The mission was hard. I mean, I'll be honest, it was tough. Basically, if you lack purpose, you're just basically going to be running in circles.
Hey, what up, everybody? Just like always, I'm super excited. Every time we're excited about this, Jeff. So excited to have you. Obviously, we want to go through a lot of different things with you doing a lot of breath work, cold plunges. It seems like a lot of people are into that. We'll get to that, but kind of how we start off every episode. I want to know like where you're from, Jeff, where you grew up, how that played a part in how you got to Utah, met your wife. Kind of roll through early life with Jeff and kind of take us through what it was like growing up with your family, parents, what they were like for you, and then kind of let's roll into, how you met your wife, got to Utah, and where you're at now.
Okay, let's do it. So I grew up in a little small farm town in Washington State. There were only like 3,000 people in our town.
Yeah.
So itty bitty. I was number 4 of 6 kids. My parents had 3 girls all back to back, and then they couldn't get pregnant for like 6 years.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I showed up. Now, at the time, my parents didn't have health insurance, but my dad had cows. And so he sold the cows to pay for my birth. And so we always joke that I'm like the old church video, Mahana, and that my dad had to sell cows for my birth.
That's hilarious.
I had 3 older sisters, and then there was a 6-year gap, then me, and then I have a younger sister, younger brother.
Cool.
So as a young kid, I just followed my sisters around to all of their different sports. And our family was very active. My dad loved sports. And so subsequently, all of us love sports. And so we did 3 sports all school year, basically. As far as like my younger childhood, I loved being outside and I loved being with my dad on the farm.
Yeah. What did you guys have on the farm?
Like as far as animals? So my dad didn't like animals. He had cows off and on, but only like maybe 6 or 10 cows here and there. But he didn't like animals because they were just a pain. We'd be out, I don't know, baling hay or something, and we'd get a call that our cows were loose and several miles down the road, and then we'd have to go round them up. So they just weren't worth it to him. But we grew alfalfa that would then get exported to like Japan and China and to other places. And so my dad always had a high quality, high tolerance for our work ethic. And I don't know if you've ever watched the old, there was an old church video called The $10 Job. Have you seen that one?
Yes.
And my dad, as kids, would always make us watch it. And then he'd just pound it into our head and say, now make sure you do a $10 job.
For those people that haven't seen the video, give us the watered down version.
Yeah, I'll give you the watered down version. So there's this young boy. He's probably, I don't know, maybe 12, 14 years old. And he mows the lawn for this old lady in his neighborhood. And at the end of his time of doing the yard work, he has to go to her and say, on a scale of 1 to 10 in dollars, how well of a job he did.
Yep.
And she would always then come out with him and rate and say, okay, this was a $5 job. This was a $7 job. And the goal was to get to a $10 job, which was exceptional work.
Yep.
And so one day he just, like the night before, just got up all this motivation, got all excited and just pumped himself up. Like, I'm going to go in tomorrow and I'm going to do a $10 job. And so he does. He goes in and he mows, he edges, he just like does everything you could imagine. The yard is immaculate and he's so proud of himself for the work that he did. And then he goes to the old lady and shows her, and she's just impressed. She's like, oh my goodness, this is beautiful. And so I feel like for myself, my dad like taught us that. And I feel like I've always had that as my like my motivation going forward in my work ethic is make sure I do a $10 job with everything that I do. Now, do I always do a $10 job? Not necessarily. I have some days that I'm just not super motivated, but that's okay. Like there's ebbs and flows.
It's funny, like growing up, what you learn from your parents and what sticks with you.
Oh, I know.
Like how that resonates with you, and you still think it's important.
Yeah.
You know, that's awesome.
Yeah, so we had about 1,000 acres on the farm, so we were pretty busy. Yep. We didn't have a ton of money. Money was always tight for us. It was tough. It was hard because we'd see other people in our area that had ski boats and were doing things, going, I don't know, snowboarding on snowboard trips, and like we didn't do any of that. Yeah. We had dirt bikes. My dad grew up with horses, and then when he was about 16, he sold the horses or convinced his dad to get rid of the horses, and they got dirt bikes. Yeah. And so we always had dirt bikes growing up. I remember I got my first bike when I was 11 from a neighbor. It was this old 1979 Yamaha that was an on-road, off-road bike, and I rode the crap out of that thing. I mean, I broke off every blinker and taillight you could imagine that was ever attached to that bike. But I loved bikes. I loved the feeling and the freedom with dirt bikes. I loved being in the mountains, all of it. Yeah. So as far as like the rest of my childhood, farming for me I loved it. It was my passion. Like I loved my family. I loved being home. There weren't a lot of kids in my grade, so I didn't really socialize much. I was pretty shy. I was really chubby as a kid, so I was really self-conscious about that. I mean, I was strong, and I played football, and I lifted weights, and I did wrestling, and I did all the sports, but I was still shy. Like, never had a girlfriend, never kissed a girl all through high school. It wasn't until college that I had my first kiss. So I was really attached to my family and found a lot of safety at home with my family. I liked the consistency of it. And my family didn't travel a lot. We weren't we were adventurous, but we just, like, I didn't get on an airplane until I was in college. Yeah. And so...
Let's chat about your family really quick, right? Because you made a comment a little bit earlier, and the older that I get, and obviously I think I have the advantage because being a loan officer, when people come to get home loans, you know, obviously we've got to take a look at their debt to income ratio, see what they have payment wise each month, you know, and teach their own, whatever they want to buy, they want to buy. The one thing that I've learned getting older, and you could probably resonate with this, because when you're a younger kid, you don't understand this, right? Because my childhood is very much like yours, but what I took away from it was my dad was, you know, we don't buy stuff in like toys, a depreciating asset. I wouldn't even call it an asset, a depreciating boat or car. We're not going to buy that if we've got to put it on credit. That's just how my dad was raised, right? If you don't have the money, you don't buy it. Whereas nowadays, it's like you go to the boat show, boats are $300,000-$400,000. You can finance them over 30 years, right? Now, the argument is, well, I would rather pay a monthly fee and have memories with my family than not. So it's like teach their own, whatever they want to do. But when you're young, right, you hit it right on the head. When you see people around you with boats and all these fancy things, you sit there and think like, well, what's wrong? You know what I'm saying? But part of that to me is like, well, how do we get motivated? It motivated me young in life because I'm like, well, they must have figured out how to make more money, which I don't think is necessarily a problem. Right? So one of two things. Either they're in debt or the guy has made enough money to be able to purchase that thing. So it made me believe that, like, hey, going and getting a regular job, you know, a 9-to-5 or being put on a salary, put in a box, however you want to kind of say it, that there's other ways to make money in life, you know, and there's a future to where, like, hey, if I want that boat, we're going to figure that out with my family. And if it's something that's super, super important for us, we've got to choose one or two things. Either we have the cash available or it's memory time and, hey, we're just going to have to do what we got to do to create the memories and the lifestyle, right? Do you kind of feel as you've gotten older that that's kind of the way you look back at that now? Or how do you kind of take growing up, seeing that stuff around and then knowing what you know now?
Yeah, there's, it was... Looking back now, I look at like the way my parents handled it, the way my dad handled it, and I think that they handled it exceptionally, perfectly. Like I The one thing for him was his priority was us, was the family.
Yep.
He always said that he could have made the farm bigger. He could have farmed more, like leased more ground, like just increased the operation, which would have made him more wealthy. But he knew that was going to take more of his time.
Correct.
And his biggest priority was being there for us, with us. And he loved going to every single one of our sporting events. And that's one thing that I cherish still to this day, was he was at every single game, whether it was home, away, like you name it. Whereas some of the other kids on my team whose dads also farmed, they weren't there.
Yeah.
They didn't have that flexibility or the ability to do it. And so I appreciate my parents for doing that.
Yep.
And I feel like they did a really good job with balancing the fact of we're raising 6 kids. We've also got like the farm that we've got to keep in operation. And we will make do with what we can where we can.
Correct.
And right now owning, let's say, a ski boat is not a practical thing.
Yeah.
And so I don't look back at them like, oh man, like how dare they? And I wish we could have. Because I also appreciate the fact that spending time as a family, like for us doing dirt bikes, was a priority of my dad's, to where he went out of his way to find ways to make it to where we could enjoy those activities.
Correct.
And I feel like even still to this day, I do that with myself or with my kids, where I will find a way to make it to where we can afford to go do something or have something.
Yep.
Whether it's not spending money somewhere else or maybe working a little harder to make money, or just adjusting my priorities to where it fits.
Well, and probably what's a little funny to you, because it is for me now. Like when you grew up, your dad didn't have the internet. Like we didn't have cell phones. Where
didn't have social media.
What you and your wife do for work now, obviously, we'll jump into that. You could have never done that years ago and been successful like you guys are now. Like life is completely different.
Yeah.
You know, and so to even like try and put that in context, because I laugh at my dad sometimes when he's like, yeah, when I was a little kid, TVs just came out. And now it's like, you got 90-inch big screens on the, sitting here. And it's like, that happened real quick in just a 50, 60-year period.
Yeah.
You know? And so to try and put that in context of growing up to what we can do now with technology and what we have it's I think for the younger generation especially, teenagers in their early 20s, like that conceptually just doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
Probably can't even fathom that.
Yeah.
I guess talk to me. So like graduating class in high school, how big was it?
Like 60 kids.
Wild, dude. Mine was like 900.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So super tight.
Yeah. I guess, with you being with, sisters, looking at them, did they all stay around in the city? Did they end up getting out, going for college? Like what happened as you guys got a little bit older?
One of them went to BYU, and then the other 2 went to Rexburg to Rick's, back when it was Rick's. Once they got married, I was in high school at the time, and we basically followed them to here and there, and just loved the brother-in-laws. The brother-in-laws, they grew up in our town, so they were like family. They grew up working on the farm with us, so
awesome.
They've known me since I was teeny tiny.
So they were just in the back in the barn with your sisters at a young age.
Yeah. And so then once they started having kids, then my parents we'd drop everything to go see them and go spend time with them. They eventually, once they started having kids, they all moved to Eastern Washington and went to college up there near Spokane. So
cool.
They through high school, I graduated and then went on my mission to Indiana.
Yeah.
I was there until 2007.
How was that for you?
The mission was hard. I mean, I'll be honest, it was tough. So like when I talked about how I found safety in like my home and my family, it was hard for me to like leave because I was so attached to it that I got super homesick. Yeah. And anytime I'd get transferred or new companion or whatever, it would like start all over again. Yep. And so it was tough, but looking like in general, it was the best thing I could have ever done. Like it totally took me from being at people at the time, like I went from being a boy to being a man.
Yeah.
Like I left being super chubby. Like when I got out, I was like 280, 285. And then I got up to like 300 pounds, and I had filled out all my shirts that at the time were like pretty big when I first left. And I thought, I can't go home like this. And so about halfway through, I finally like just made a shift and shifted my eating and all the stuff. And I ended up getting down to like 250. And then by the time I got home, I just kept grinding and kept
going at it,
trying to work it off the best I could.
No, I love it because it is tough, right? Like probably, especially you growing up on a small little farm with your family, like that was probably very hard.
Yeah,
you know,
like I was shy, like,
and I think I even went through that. You know, going to Peru on the mission, it's like nobody knows me.
Yeah,
like you're on an island trying to figure it out, trying to make new friends, trying to be accepted.
Yeah,
I mean, you're starting the whole high school thing all over again.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
But I love what you said. I mean, it really changed your life and really helped you kind of moving forward.
It helped me a lot with like where I said like I was really shy. It really helped me break through that. Like it really forces you, like just throws you in the fire, and you've got to like come through it and come out of it. And that's what I did. Like as time went on, I got better with talking with people. I got just more comfortable with myself as far as like just my own self-confidence. I got comfortable with just being on my own, being my own leader, and not relying on the coattails of my parents. Yeah. And so, it transformed me exceptionally. Like it was pivotal in my growth. Yeah. And so, came home, went to college, went straight to college at BYU, Idaho. Yeah. And then it was only maybe like less than a year, ran into my wife there, and we dated like nonstop, like just instantly. Instant for me, I just instantly knew. Yeah. Like I dated a few other girls and it just was so awkward. But then the first moment I was with my wife, like you just felt at home. You felt at peace.
Give us kind of the quick background on her. Did she, I mean, growing up, did she kind of have the same background as you, or is she completely different?
A little little and a lot of different. So she grew up in a family of 8. When she was 5, her father left the family. She was number 7 of the family. So she had one younger brother who at the time he was 3. And the dad left to go, basically came out of the closet, went to go live with another man. Yeah. And totally abandoned his wife and all 8 kids. Yeah. And it's been interesting with how much that moment, like just that whole experience in general, has affected like my wife and then the rest of her siblings. Yeah. And so it's a big learning lesson for as a parent of how you can shape your kids, but it's also a good learning lesson for us as individuals for how much attachment we have with our parents and with our childhood. I feel like, and we'll probably touch base on this maybe later on, but it's incredible with the work that my wife and I do, how much work is spent understanding and repatterning your childhood. Yeah. And that's one thing that I think has helped my wife a lot with her experience, is being able to then understand and have empathy for everyone else's experience as a child. Correct. And that was like for me where I struggled, because my childhood was easy peasy. Like it was, everything was provided. Yeah. I had breakfast ready for me in the morning. I had lunch. I had dinner. Like all my laundry was always done. Like it just was so easy. And so for my wife, where it was kind of the opposite, where her childhood was hard and rough, and she doesn't really have good memories of it. What did she kind of have to go through that? I mean, was her mom able to take care of them all? You know, was it something where like, yeah, hey, so eventually it took them, like they were on their own for about 4 years, and her mom just did what she could. She would they were in Oregon at the time. Then she'd come back to Salt Lake, and then they go back to Oregon, and then back to Salt Lake, and just trying to do what she could to be supported either by the dad at the beginning of it, and then eventually supporting herself and her kids, or being supported and living with like her parents. So her mom did an excellent job. Like, she's a saint for what she had to deal with. Yeah. But it was difficult because, like, for her mom, she just did the best that she could. And at times it just still wasn't quite enough for these little kids who just wanted their mom's attention. But yet her mom is like just doing everything that she can just to like keep her head above water. Yeah. So they were, and then about 3-4 years later, when my wife was like 7 or 8, her mom got remarried to a man who had 6 kids. And so then they grew up in a family of 14. It stacked in a way to where his kids were, most of them were older, but there was an overlap of some sort. And so, that was challenging as well, for her to like be a stepchild in a family and experiencing all of that. But she had, as far as like her childhood going forward, she did high school rodeo. Her dad was big into ranching and horses. Cool. And when she was younger, she went to some rodeo event, and I think the parents were like, oh wow, she's into this. Like, this is something that interests her. And so then they did a really good job to kind of foster that and provide her with a good opportunity. And so she did that. And then after high school, she went to BYU, Idaho, and went into nursing. And she was smart. Like, she just went in, got amazing grades, and cranked it out. And by the time we got married, she had graduated and was working as a labor and delivery nurse there in Rexburg. And so she was providing us with her income while I was going to school. And I was not so smart. My grades were horrendous. Like, I was below a 3.0, and it was, but being married to her, she helped me a lot with basically getting my head screwed on straight and motivating me, and was like, you've got to get good grades. Like, you got to figure this out. Yeah. And so it really motivated me to like do a $10 job. And so, so I went into construction management. It's a 4-year degree there. And I think it was about a year or two in, they said you need an internship. You need to do 2 internships, one during your junior year and one before junior and before senior. You have to do 2 internships. And that terrified me. I'm like, I got to go get like a real job. Cause I mean, everything I had done had just been like farm work or working for the family farm. So I went and I sent my resume out, called people, tried everything I could. And then one day I went to the temple in the morning, and then I just had this idea. I'm like, hey, I got one more company I'm going to go try, one more shot, and we'll just see what happens. But this time I was going to go physically to their office and go hand in my resume. So I drove there, walked in, and I said, my name's Jeff Sabin, and I'm looking for an internship. I'm willing to work for free. This is my resume. And my boss happened to just be downstairs checking his mailbox, which, knowing him now, was pretty rare. Yeah. And he turns around. He's like, I'll take that. And he took it from me before the secretary could take it. Yeah. And I got interviewed a few days later and got hired on. And I loved it. I was so motivated. Yeah. And I did everything I could to do a $10 job. Yeah. And eventually they were just impressed. And this was during the recession too. Yeah. And this was 2009 is when I first started with them. Okay. So, I mean, tail end of recession, however you want to refer to it. So I worked with them, and there was another kid there who was kind of doing the same thing I was, who he taught me, and he was not doing a very good job. He just was super lazy, distracted, played on his phone a lot. And eventually they let him go, and they let go another guy who was kind of same work ethic. And what was beautiful is it provided me an opportunity to where there was a gap, and I stepped in, and I just
took advantage of it.
So
when they hired you, did he end up paying you, or did you actually go on and
they paid me. The pay wasn't super great. It was, I don't know, maybe $12, $15 an hour. I mean, at the time I was just ecstatic.
But I think, Jeff, like, this is the biggest lesson, right? Because, like, I run a mortgage company. If somebody came to me and said, hey, like, I'll work for free, I just want to figure this out.
Yeah.
Right? I'm more likely to say, let's roll and I'm going to pay you.
Yeah.
Versus having, like, it happened to us the other day. We're interviewing to hire loan officers and stuff like that. And some guy came in with some big old presentation and then told me what he wanted to make.
Yep.
And my response to him was, okay, well, you want to make X amount of dollars per month. How are you going to do a return on investment to make sure I get my money plus some if we're just going to pay you that straight out of the gate?
Yeah.
And he, like, honestly couldn't answer it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, this is a sales position. So, like, we just don't, like, pay you whopping huge salaries to come sit at the desk and do nothing, you know? But I think the younger generation, like, and especially us, like, looking back at it, I wish I would have probably done that a lot more, which was, I want to be like somebody, or you, not saying you knew this boss or, you know, this was kind of your last option, but you knew what it was going to take to probably get hired at your last option, which was, hey, I just need this.
I just need
because
experience.
If I have any shot in 2 years of getting a job to get a salary, provide income for my wife, it's about the experience.
Yep.
So even if the experience comes at the cost that it's free because my wife's working right now, she can take care of us, like, I'll do whatever it takes.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the biggest things to take away from this is, of course, he's more prone to take a look at your resume, figure out who you are and why your mentality is that way. And then you came into it with, like, hey, I got to prove myself, not that, like, I'm entitled and they owed me something.
Yep.
Right? Because I graduated from college.
Yep.
You know? And so it's just interesting to me that I think that should be a big takeaway for a lot of people, that it's like, if you want to go to work for somebody really good, figure out how to do something probably for free to actually get noticed. And then for there, it's probably going to be pretty easy to get on.
Oh yeah, it's huge. And a lot of people don't understand that. They think, I'll just go get a degree, I'll just go get some education and I'll be good. But I've told a lot of people that moment or that whole experience was by far the biggest thing as far as my path going forward. And I tell people, like, the best thing you can do in college, if you have to get like an internship, is get a good internship and work for free, because there's value in that. And I was willing to do that. Fortunately, like we said, like, they paid me, but I watched a lot of guys who, for their internships, they would go frame houses or go work for an actual construction company in the field, getting that experience. And that, like, watching their path and where they went afterwards, it was like night and day, because then they missed out on an opportunity to, like, really learn something.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that whole experience, like, totally shifted and changed everything for me. And even going forward in my classes, like, I would take a class and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I do this every day at work.
Yep.
Or I've already learned this, or I just did this.
The aha moment in college that it actually makes sense to go.
Yes. And it then, like, the last year or two, it got easy. And then towards the end, I'm like, I'm ready to be done with college, because I'm already working full time. I'm already bidding my own jobs, managing my own projects. Like, I'm already doing it. Like, sitting in class at college and receiving phone calls and emails for stuff that was actual real construction and not just the make-believe stuff we were playing with in class, that felt cool. That felt special to me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, good for you, dude. I guess, kind of talk to us on, like, how you guys got to Utah, you know, kind of dive into that. And then let's kind of dive into your wife, right? Like, at what point you felt like your wife was doing good enough to where you could step away. You know, I know obviously you've been helping her quite a bit, but it's always tough going from, like, a job that's pretty predictable on income, and, you know, how do you throw that aside and then jump into the more of the entrepreneur type of stuff? believing that everything's going to work itself out and you guys are still going to maintain a great lifestyle or have a better lifestyle. Kind of walk us through how you got to Utah, what that shift was like with her job kind of making more money and you kind of stepping away.
Yeah. So, so we got married, basically, it was December 2009 is when we got married, and we lived in Rexburg for like 2 years. Then we bought a house in Rigby. So just between Rexburg and Idaho Falls, we lived there for 3 years. And in the midst of the 5-year span that we were married and living in Idaho, my wife worked on and off at 2 different hospitals, as a labor and delivery nurse working at night. Now, at the time, money was like super tight for us, like just very tight. Just, we had 2 kids, we had the house, super fortunate. But I mean, I was super strict with our budget to where it would cause fights with us constantly. Yeah. Because I'd be like, we can spend X on this and Y on this and this. And then I'd get a notification and we get an overdraft and find out she went on to TJ Maxx and dropped $100 on new house decorations. And then then I'd explode and I'd be like, we can't, like, we don't have the money. We don't have the money. Like, our income is set. Like, it's one thing that we're fortunate with now is like, we can put extra work in and extra money comes in. And our money's not set and locked in. So money was super tight. My wife has always been very driven and motivated, and she started blogging when we were first married, and quickly on she saw this other girl who had a blog that, I mean, at the time, for those who aren't familiar with blogs were like the social media of, let's say, 2008 or 10. It was a place for you to write what you did on the weekend, and then your family or close friends would go on and read about it. But she saw this girl who was writing to the public, not to her family, not to close friends, but to the public. And my wife instantly was like, I want that. Like, that resonates with me. I want to write to the public. So that's what she did. So she would just write. She'd write about her nights as a labor and delivery nurse. And then as time went on, she'd just try different things. She'd try DIY crafts, selling them on Pinterest. She'd try anything and everything. She's always been an entrepreneur at heart. And she got a few thousand followers, I think on Instagram or something. And we got a campaign where Home Depot approached us and said, we'll pay you $1,000 if you do this little project and post about it, and we'll pay for all the goods. And we were like, oh my goodness, we've made it. Like, this is it. So then at that point, it just grew from there. It just continued to grow. She just hustled. She wrote. She just did everything that she could. So then in 2014, I just was not happy with my job anymore. I started out at $48,000 a year. And by the time I left, I was $60,000. No benefits, like just pretty basic. And it just wasn't cutting it. And so I was talking to a buddy of mine and just told him all my woes and my problems and frustrations with the company and my boss and the amount of projects I was doing versus how much other people were working. And like I said, I was working a $10 job and everyone else was working a $3 job, and my bonuses were non-existent. Like, it just, I didn't feel like I was getting matched with what I was worth, like my value. And that concept right there was interesting because a lot of people, you have to have a fine line of not getting too much of a big head that you're worth too much, but also not just sticking yourself in a corner and being like, oh, I don't deserve that. I just need to work. I'll just continue to work, and I'll just work good, and I'll just stay happy. Well, I kind of had that mindset for a bit, and where I was just going to work and be happy. And then eventually I'm like, no, like, I'm not happy. Like, this isn't cutting it. So talked with Buddy. He said, hey, you should come down to Salt Lake and work for Big D Construction. I'm like, our pay's good, benefits are good, everything's good. Like, I think you'll love it. So I did. I submitted my resume and I interviewed like a week later, and it was insane how fast it happened. But within a month and a half, with a month and a half of talking to him, we had sold our house and we had moved down here. And so to think of like just how fast that happened and just how aligned it was, it was just meant to be. So we moved here 2014, and it was interesting coming to Salt Lake because I had no intention of wanting to ever live in the city. I remember as a kid when we'd come visit my cousins and my aunts and uncles who lived down in Utah County. When we go visit them, I was just like, oh my gosh, the city's so big. It's overwhelming. And even when we lived in Idaho, if we came down every now and then, it just felt so big and scary and overwhelming. So we moved here and it just felt right. Like I just really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the weather, the mountains. Like I just loved it. Quickly after getting here, my wife and I found a gym, and before that we were both into CrossFit, but this gym not only had CrossFit but it also had a yoga studio, and my wife started picking up yoga. And that really resonated with her. And at the time, she was really struggling with like her self-image, with just her self-love, just self-acceptance. A lot of women really struggle with it. And sadly enough, a lot of guys struggle with it. Just our inner self-confidence and our inner voice of just who we are. And there's a lot of chatter in there that's built up from either things our parents have told us, mean things that were told to us in high school that's still etched in there for some reason, like just all that. So she had a lot of mind chatter, we'll call it, that was embedded into her system, and she found a lot of peace in yoga and meditation that really just took her off into a whole different trajectory. And it opened her up to this whole new world outside of religion, outside of the church. Because like for her, it was always before, it was just read your scriptures, go to church and pray, and all your answers will be there. Which I can't discount that and discredit that because I know that it's true, but there's more out there that God has provided for us. There's the outdoors, there's movement, there's meditation, there's you name it. There's so much available for us. And she was tapping into that. For myself, I was very conventional. I was very rigid. I was very, very much like my parents, like very closed-minded. To where like this is just the way, like you just stick with the way that everyone else does it and you don't deviate and try different things. But my wife I love her because she's always questioning and always trying. So as time went on, she just continued to just take and learn and became yoga teacher certified and did more trainings, and her following just continued to grow and expand. And like when we first moved here, she had 5,000 followers on Instagram, and it just quickly expanded from there. And now she's over 100,000 followers at the point. But as time went on, she would give so much of her knowledge and teaching online to her followers. And then in like 2017, 2018, there was a guy who came to her and said, hey, I created courses of my own and sold them. I can do the same thing with you, to where we can take your content and basically package them together, make them pretty, and throw them online and make a killing out of it. And at this time, like, she was making money, but a lot of the money she was making was just off campaigns. It was some random company saying, we'll pay you X amount of dollars for a blog post or an Instagram or something like that. So
this was kind of a new concept, because she was just kind of chatting about showing people what she's been doing. This guy was kind of like, hey, let's try and monetize this and then sell this is something that people could do at their homes. More of an in-house type of stuff for men and women.
And it was a thing. A lot of people were selling courses, and she always wanted to sell a course. And we had done ones where it was like a free at-home CrossFit workout that we had created together, and she promoted it. And so, it was, the hard part was being able to package it, because it took a lot of time and a lot of money. And even then we didn't have a lot of extra money for the videography or just everything associated with it. And even just the knowledge. And I wasn't really involved with it even then. I was still in the mindset that this was just a fun hobby for hers, and she was getting some side money, like for the whatever that she could use on herself. And that was kind of the agreement that we had.
She could go back to TJ Maxx.
Yeah, she'd go back to TJ Maxx. It escalated to Lululemon once we moved here. And we had a good, money was still kind of an issue. I had a really big hold up on money, like this fear of being in debt, like kind of, losing it all. And so we still had our arguments with money, but eventually we got to like a pretty good agreement to where I said, I'll pay for all the needs and you can pay for all the wants. Yeah. And so I covered all the bills. I covered all of all that stuff. And then she would cover
I guess
all
I'm
the
pretty,
fun stuff.
Yeah, I guess I'm pretty curious about this subject for you guys, right? Because I think my marriage is a little bit different than yours. But to be very honest, like we didn't get married till we were 27, 28 years old. So we were both established, right? So the income was there. Yeah. You know, so it was never like we got into our marriage and then it was like, well, what bills are we covering? It was like she was very independent, had a house. I was very independent, didn't have a house. So she was a lot smarter than me. But it was easy to come together and then put the incomes together and realize like, oh, combined, we make some pretty good money right now. Yeah. You know, at 27, 20 years old, kind of the assumption. So we never had to go through that in the marriage where it's like, hey, we're really poor college students. We're finally making a little bit of money.
Immature too. Like you just don't know how to...
You've kind of made those mistakes on your own as far as budgeting, right? Yeah. Being in debt, not in debt. How do you kind of manage that? What we can buy, what we can't buy. You know, so when you come together, it was just so much easier in our marriage. Yeah. That was never a fight for us.
And you're more emotionally established.
Correct.
Even just, let's say it's 5 or 7 years older versus like when we were married. Yeah. Like you're more emotionally well established.
Correct.
And
you have an idea of who you are, of what you like.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you can handle your emotions better. Correct. In a conversation regarding finances. Correct. Better than when you're 23 and 21 years old. So,
and nobody teaches you about this stuff.
No,
I mean, that's the other hard part is like, you don't really understand that a credit card is 22% interest if you don't pay the thing off. And then how do we get ahead of, how do you even sort of come back from that type of thing?
And both of our families were big on, her family was big on no debt, no credit cards. So when we got married, like she had no credit score. And which was
another problem.
Yeah, like she had zero credit. Yeah. And so whereas my family was throw everything on the credit card, just not, to a certain extent, like kind of what we were talking about before, like they were like, oh, you need a couch, you need a car, like just finance it. Yep. Like finance the things that you need.
Correct.
Not the wants, but the needs.
Correct.
And I didn't like that idea. So through all of our marriage, we never were in debt.
How did you guys get through that though? How did you guys get through the money fights?
Like the fight itself.
I think more than anything is like how do you come on an understanding of like, hey, here's realistically what comes in every month. This is the money we have. In order to not go in any debt or, have the bank charge us a fee because we overdrew, right? How do you stay within that budget? And then you've got all the outside chatter, like you've been talking about a little bit, right? Because I'm sure there's some pressure from you guys on, hey, we got to move to Utah. There's cost on that. Hey, I'm trying to get some business or entrepreneurial type stuff going. There's costs associated to that. Like, how did you guys kind of understand what the budget was, but also in those times of like arguments, how did you come back to an understanding of like, okay, well, does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
A little bit? Yeah. Because I think a lot of people go through this in marriage.
Yeah.
And it's a tough thing to go through because the other problem with this is once you get stuck in that rut, it's harder to be an entrepreneur and take the risks and kind of go into debt, right? Because what if you can't get back out of it?
Yep.
And so people get stuck in the rut and then stay in the rut.
Yep.
And they can't. And then there's just this unhappiness in the marriage that, oh, we can't do anything. We're cash poor.
Yep.
Right. And then 20 years passes by and there's some bitterness.
Yeah.
And so how do you feel like you guys kind of overcame that or got through it?
I think the biggest thing is you have to get on the same page as each other. Like, I picture, like, as an analogy, I think of how many times do you, like, think of like going on a hike and someone comes with you, but they don't know where they're going. They're probably going to gripe and complain because you're just going to keep saying, "Oh, we're almost there. It's just around this corner."
We just sounds like my marriage. I'm the one griping.
Yeah. Whereas if you have someone who understands the trail, understands the terrain, understands how long it's going to be, how hard it's going to be, like how much
do you
food.
Convince them though? Is this a preparation conversation up front, or is this?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is you sit down with each other and you understand where each other's what's the word I'm looking for? Priorities are.
Yeah.
So you sit down with your spouse and you say, "Okay, what's your priority?" Well, if their priority is that they want a gym membership or they want X amount of dollars to drop at Target every single week or
Good
whatever.
luck controlling that one, Jeff.
Yeah. Like that's where you have to understand one another.
Yeah.
And then from there, then you can.
Yeah.
And my wife and I, when we were first married, we had a lot of moments like that where we got on the same page. Whereas when we were first married, I would read the Dave Ramsey book and be like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And then I'd basically tell my wife what we're going to do. And that didn't work.
I've got a love-hate with Dave Ramsey, dude.
Yes, same.
I mean, I think he's smart, but at the same time, I think he's so unrealistic for people that are making $60,000, $70,000 a year.
Yeah.
I think he's brilliant. Yeah, don't go into debt. But at the same time, like...
Buying a house for us was the best thing we could have ever done.
Especially over the last decade, dude.
Yeah.
How much money have you made off of just solely owning a home?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's been absurd. And the supply and demand issue is still there, which means there's still value to be had in home ownership.
Yeah. My biggest suggestion is get into a house as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Like that was pivotal for us.
Your analogy was pretty funny because I'm trying to think right outside of Spokane. What's the big lake?
Oh,
the big like touristy place on the huge lake.
Near Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah. We were there last summer, right? Because your analogy just made me laugh. And the reason I said it was my marriage, because there's like some bike trail, like I don't even know what it's called. It starts with a W, really weird name. And so it's like, my wife's like, oh, we're going to go to the bike trail with the kids. Like it's only like 2 or 3 hours, we'll be done. You know what I'm saying? Well, it's like the trail is like where they used to run the trains.
Oh yeah. The old railroad.
Railroad. And so it's like a 2% grade. And you start at the very top of this mountain, and it's like a 2% grade to get all the way to the bottom. So she's like, oh, it's only like 2 or 3 hours, we'll be done. Like, there's no cell service. My job is like purely off a cell phone and internet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, what time we start? And she's like 8. We'll probably be done like 11. You know what I'm saying? Well, we get up there, and it's like, well, she didn't even look into the bike trail. Like, dude, this was a 9-hour bike ride with my children. Like, I have no cell service, like...
Not enough water.
You know what I'm saying? Like, she already knows, like, I'm just so ornery. You know? And I think, to take your analogy backwards, is it's like, I'm trying to figure out work. And so I'm asking her questions on what this bike ride is going to look like on a Thursday afternoon for me.
You're trying to prepare.
So I can prepare my team, my staff, everybody, how long I'm going to disappear for the day and how long you can get a hold of me for.
Yeah.
Right? When she's kind of like on the mindset of like, dude, you're working all the time. Like you can escape for one day. It's going to be completely fine.
Yep.
Like, don't get mad at me. Right.
Yep.
And so come enjoy the family time, enjoy all this. But the problem is the lack of communication and preparation for me made that an ornery experience for myself.
Yep.
Because I'm so anxious on what's happening during the day. Because my mind wasn't right, right? I wasn't in the right headspace.
Yeah.
For her, it's like, hey, that was an amazing time. Your kids loved bike riding. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. But I didn't know we were going to be gone for 8 hours or 9 hours today.
Yeah.
And then bus rides back and forth. And then we're off the mountain when it's dark. And then I got to, put up with everything as soon as I can get my cell phone service back.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of this for us is in marriage, I would say, and especially the money side or whatever that is. It's more of like communication. Because to me, this is something that's never taught in college. They're never going to teach you how to balance a checkbook or what interest on the repayment looks like on a credit card or anything like that. So the way that we grow up, we're only byproducts of what we kind of know and what we kind of understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think the communication side of stuff is probably the most important. But your analogy made me laugh because that's exactly what happened to us last summer. But
one thing that my wife has helped me a lot is the mindset with money. So
it's huge.
If you like, it's one thing. So if I'm giving any advice to couples out there, is get on the same page.
Yep.
But also the next advice is have a mindset of abundance.
Bingo.
I've got, like, going back to my family, like my family is so like non-abundant to where they'll look at things and be like, oh, that's so expensive. Who would ever spend X amount of dollars on that? And so all you're doing is just showing hate to your money. Yep. And I recently read a book a few months ago where the concept is love money, money loves you. It might even be the title of the book.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful concept of reading that book, and the shift of how that has helped me in the last recent years is if you can, again, love your money and give it gratitude, and also look at life as abundant and not with a lack mindset, then opportunities are going to come your way. Now, I'm not saying like, oh, just have this fanciful mindset and all of a sudden all your problems are solved and you're going to get free groceries at the grocery store. No, that's not the case. But if you're buying stuff with the mindset and the intention and the energy with your exchange of money and it's negative, then your money's not going to want to come to you.
Correct.
And because there's energy, like my wife calls it, we call it an energetical exchange. So when people purchase like a ticket to one of our retreats, we call it an energetical exchange, where they are giving us their hard worked money, and we then in return give them something in return.
Correct.
And what's been beautiful to watch is in the last like 2-3 years, we've been running retreats, and the very first one we did was $2,500. That same retreat now is $5,500. And the level of people from that first one to the most recent one, they're so much more elevated. It's mind-blowing, and it's because of the mindset that they have.
Yeah.
And then to add to that, we've had ones where she's given them away to friends either for free or discounted, and they don't come into the experience with the mindset that the others do, the ones that paid full price. So I guess to sum things up is show gratitude for your money, for your purchases, what you're doing, and get on the same page with your partner with all of that. Like, have the same mindset with your partner, with your spouse, to have gratitude for the money. So like when you get your paycheck, say thank you. Like, I'm grateful for you, instead of just getting it and just being like, oh, it's just going here and here. And that's one thing my wife and I do is when we get like a new sign up for either our courses or whatever, like we we celebrate with each other. Like we'll text each other and be like, oh, we got a new sign up, or we got this, or how exciting is that?
Yeah, I mean, really what you're saying is everything's on the positive side, right? I mean, the hard part about this is a lot of people that live in that conservative life is the negativity, right? Like, there's no mindset on like the abundance of what's on this earth. Yeah. And so they go into a negative mindset of like, we can't do that, we can't buy this, we can't afford it, which really is what you're just telling yourself is like, you have no potential to grow. Yeah. That's really what you're doing. You're just shutting yourself down.
Yeah, you're holding yourself back.
You're holding yourself way back. I mean, two things that I think changed my entire life is I read the book The Secret. People make fun of it all the time. I get it. I mean, I think it's kind of corny.
I'm glad you brought that up.
But at the same time, dude, it's kind of like, everything is an energy. And wherever your energy goes, that's where you're going to flow. Yep. And so if you have a positive abundance mindset where like, hey, I'm looking forward to get up, working, putting in a lot of hours, making a lot of contacts, networking as much as possible, the odds are, Jeff, I'm going to be very successful. Yeah. If I wake up with a negative mindset, go to work, sit around on my phone, don't make any phone calls, don't do any networking, don't try and meet new people, well, dude, one of these two is going to make a lot of money. One of these is not going to make any money. Yep. And then when I don't make any money, then my whole aura I'll use that word, I guess, it just shuts down,
yep.
right? Because I'm not making any money, which means I probably can't be fit, which means me and my wife can't go do fun stuff. We can't create any experiences. And now I'm at completely glasses half empty all the time mindset
yep.
versus it's always full. The best thing for my life, dude, was summer cells. And people make fun of summer cells, and I understand it because obviously I don't do it anymore. But summer cells was the aha moment for me.
People just make fun of stuff that they don't understand.
Yeah. But that was the aha moment for me where I looked at the sales manager and it was like, you make $130,000, $150,000, $180,000 a year? Like, whoa, I'm 21 years old.
Yeah.
Like, my brother just got a job at Fidelity making $60,000, $70,000 a year on salary. How are you doing this? And how did he just get a degree? And now in my mind, it's like, well, school doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather probably go knock doors and try and make more money and go hustle.
Go do the unconventional thing.
Yeah. And that was the aha moment for me where it's like, hey, these actors and athletes and all these people put in so much time and effort. They get paid what they're deserved.
Yep.
Right. Versus like, hey, I just went to school. Somebody come pay me.
Yep.
Right. And so I don't know. This whole conversation's been very interesting, and hopefully this leads into what you guys are doing now.
Yeah.
You know, I guess talk about what you've been doing. Let's talk about your name first. Right.
Breath Work Cowboy.
How you became the Breath Work Cowboy, and then talk to me on what these retreats are like.
Yeah.
What are they doing for people? Why do you guys put them on? Like, how has it been super beneficial, and what's been the change for you and your wife mentally? You know, I know you've touched on it a little bit, but what is it doing for somebody that's actually coming to you guys and paying the $5,500? How is it changing their life, and what are they looking to get out of it?
Yeah. So, I guess let's go back to like my wife. So she created those courses in like 2017, 18, and they were successful. They did really good. Her first one was, she called the Ultimate Self-Love Series. It was a course of a few different courses where you learned how to meditate. You learned about chakras. You learned about your body, your mind, different practices you could do to be able to really love yourself. And at the time, a lot of women were really struggling with that. And so she's just continued down that same path, down that same teaching of self-love.
Yeah.
Now it's taken off into different paths here and there, but ultimately it all comes back to self-love. So as time went on, she wanted to expand. She wanted to do something like just continually adding new things, doing something different. And that's one thing that I've always been amazed is I think, man, what are we going to do next year? Like, and I stress about it. Yeah. I'm like, we've killed it this year with selling these courses or doing these things. What are we going to do? And she comes up with something else. Like, it just blows my mind. So, let's see, a few years ago, we went on, it was about 4 years ago, we went on a backpacking trip down to Canyonlands with a friend of another couple of ours. And they were talking, my wife and the other wife, and they're like, we should bring girls here and bring them backpacking. And there's so many times my wife will talk about things and I'm just like, dude, there's no way. Like, I still have this non-abundant mindset to where I just hold things back. I'm like, whatever, like, this is impossible. But we did it. We now run a retreat where we did it for a while, for twice a year, spring and fall, but now we just do it in the fall, and it's called Simply Wild. And she takes 12 women and they backpack 4 or 5 miles into this campsite, stay the night, do a day hike, stay another night, and then they hike back out. They have to haul in all their water, all their food. They have to shit in bags and haul it out. Like, it's the real deal. And while they're out there, she's doing different activities. Activities makes it seem like they're doing crafts, but they're doing different things where it's like yoga and journaling and mindset work. And it's so I go there with them so we stay the first night in Moab, and then they will leave early that next morning to head out and go hike. And so I kind of help in the back end and try and stay in the shadows. But what's beautiful is to see those girls show up just like scared little birds. And then they leave, they go back home just totally confident, just radiating, just glowing, just excited to get back to their kids, their husbands, like just happy because they've found something within themselves that they didn't know was even in there, because
give me some examples of like what these girls are reaching out to your wife about. Like what are some of the biggest problems or obstacles for them that they're like, hey, I really need this help, or hey, this would be really good for me? Is it really?
Depression. So we do another retreat. It's a brand new one that we just started doing, and it's a plant medicine retreat that is we bring in shamans, and it's ayahuasca, and it's incredible. And we, as part of the process, they have to submit an application, and so we get to see kind of what they're dealing with, what they're wanting to maybe let go of or process, or we even ask them what medications they're on. And I would say a lot of it is depression. Just, there's so many people out there that they're just sad. They don't love either where they're at in life. They lack gratitude for what they have. They compare themselves with others.
I was just going to say, is a lot of this outside pressure? Is a lot of this the Instagram life? Like,
I would say a lot of it is people just aren't present. Even for myself, when I'm not, let's say, not happy, it's because I'm not present.
Yeah.
If all of us could just take a moment, take a big, deep breath, and really just open our eyes and see what's around us and just be fully present, we'd be so much happier. Like, a lot of the times when you're grumpy, it's because you're thinking about something else while you're doing something else. Or like, a lot of times when I snap at my kids, it's because my mind is somewhere else and I'm distracted.
Yeah.
And when my 6-year-old is saying, hey, Dad, like asking me 1,000 questions on the way back from school pickup, and my mind is still back on work or emails and stuff. Yeah. I'll get short with him, and then I think, oh my gosh, okay, just be present, just take a moment. But I would say a lot of it is just being present, and a lot of it is letting go of stuff that's stored in our body.
Yeah, and I guess, like, Jeff, I'm being very honest here. Like, I have a hard time understanding depression. And I don't know.
A lot of people do.
And I don't know why I do. But I don't know if my mentality in life, even from junior high, high school, with coaches, sports, and everything, is, okay, you think I suck, I'm going to prove you wrong.
Yep.
And so I just go to work, and that's been my entire life, right? Like, it's never been like, hey, Mom and Dad, poor me, like, I'm done playing, right? Like even to this day, I get to run a mortgage company. I'm 37 years old. Like, I'm young, you know what I'm saying? But it took me 10 years to prove myself. And then the company that I was with, I'm like, well, you guys don't want me, so I'll go somewhere that wants me. Yeah. And I guess what I'm saying is, every day I look forward to the next day, because it's like a new purposeful adventure. Yeah. Right? Like, it's the same thing with my wife and kids. What are our vacation goals this year? What experiences would we like to have? How are we going to make those happen? Yep. Okay, well, I'll put the chip on my shoulder and we'll go do this. Yep. You know, so I feel like I'm always trying to move forward and fill my days up with purposeful stuff that is very positive and moving forward. The older I get, the less friends we have. Right? We probably got out of a friend group 6 or 7 years ago of 10 couples, you know, and it just got to that point where it was almost high schooly. A lot of drama, a lot of like comparing yourselves, like somebody was being more successful than others, and then you know, like talking down on people because they were scared that other people could take, you know, and it was just kind of a game all the time, to where it was like, what are we doing? Yeah. You know, like, I look at my parents, not saying that this is everybody, but they don't have a lot of friends. Yeah. But it's because they figured out like what happiness is, which is what's here right now. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Which is our children, what we're trying to basically build for our future and what we're trying to do. And so I have a very hard time to depression, because especially when people talk to me about depression, I look at their life and I'm like, well, I can dissect your life here in 3 seconds on what you're doing every day, and I can completely understand why you're depressed. Yep. Like, you're not putting yourself in a position to really progress in life. And so you're sitting there just feeling sorry for yourself, instead of like, I'm out to prove people wrong. And I don't know if I'm right, Jeff, but I have a hard time understanding it, because because I guess I've just always been like, let's put a chip on the shoulder and prove people wrong versus like, I'm just going to sit here and feel bad for myself. And hopefully in 3 days, like this passes or something. I don't know, So I don't know. Can you expand on that?
Yes, I'd love to. You said the word purpose. So I just recently finished another book. Now, when I say I finished a book, I listen to them on Audible. I love listening to audiobooks. So I just finished the book, The Way of the Superior Man. Beautiful book. Recommend it to basically any guy out there. And he talks in there about purpose. Basically, if you lack purpose, you're just basically going to be running in circles.
Yeah, you're done, dude.
And so like you touched base on your purpose. Your purpose can maybe look different ways, like versus me, but you have a purpose. And that purpose is what drove you to work hard, to just be who you are and to just grind and be successful. And it shows, like you're successful, like you're happy and you're doing things, and it's because you're living your purpose. I would dare to say, now I've never sat down with, like, let's say these ladies who are coming to my wife, and I've never really approached them and said, what is it? Why is it? I've never seen them living their lives, so I couldn't really necessarily tell you. But I would say there's different components in regards to what's your purpose. So since leaving my corporate job a year ago in construction and going full time with my wife, I've had to really take the last year to find my purpose, to find my rhythm. And there's been a lot of days that I wouldn't say I was depressed.
But you're starting over.
Yes, but it took a while to really find my rhythm and to find, again, just my purpose.
Because to me, Jeff, this is high school. We're in the game of high school all the time.
All the time.
When you're a freshman,
a bunch of kids in adult bodies.
Because when you left your job, right, everybody knew who you are. You knew your role. You knew exactly what's going on. The second you leave that atmosphere, right, now you're back to, who is Jeff? How am I going to show people that I can add value on this earth? To my wife, to my children, which is the most important. And how can I provide value to others?
Yes.
Right? And so you go back to a freshman in high school. You go back to, I'm new to the mission. You go back to, I'm new to college. Right? Now you've got to restart all over again on really proving yourself. And that may not be the right word, but how do you become accepted by peers and add value to them to where you feel great about who you are as a person? Right? And those are decisions. And this is where, like, again, I have a hard time with depression. Like, a lot of times I feel like depression is you've made bad decisions, which has put yourself behind, and now you just don't know what to do to get out of that rut. Right? And so even for you, like if I got fired today, like, dude, it's going to be rough for the next year for Rhett. I don't know what I would do. I don't know where we would go. I wouldn't know where to pivot right now. But we would pivot, and we would start the energy of moving forward. Right? And that's the biggest thing.
Motion that's key. That's pivotal.
And now, so I don't know, like, with your wife, if these are the type of conversations you guys have with what you guys are teaching, or if it's just like, hey, there's a lot more to this with a lot of people. And it starts with family, surroundings, everything.
A lot of it, people are just trying to improve themselves. Everyone just wants to be happier, and they just want to continue to excel, improve themselves. And my wife has always been on that journey, just constantly wanting to learn more, improve herself.
Curiosity, dude.
Just curiosity. So, let's see. So, let's go back to Breath Work Cowboy.
Let's do it.
Recently, a few months ago, just this last December, I went to a breathwork training, and it was a somatic breathwork course. It was a 4-day, all day long course. Now I've known a little bit about breathwork, like Wim Hof, holotropic, but I had never experienced it. So I didn't really understand it. But it just felt right. I was just like, oh, this feels correct. And it was something that my wife had seen, and she was like, I think you should do this because this could be something that you can provide, to the company, to our retreats, to whatever, who knows? So I went, and my mind was blown. I had no idea what was possible for us. So let's explain breath. and somatic breath work. So the word soma means body. Now, our bodies are incredible because we can do things with them just with our breath. Now, I'm trying to describe this in the best way that I can, but I always like to use like my horses as an analogy. Okay. So I've got horses for the last 2 years, and it's been incredible to learn from them. So I'll use my horse as an example in regards to breath. So with a horse, horses are natural cowards. They're scared of everything. Yep. Like you name it, they're just scared of everything. You look at them in the wild and you think, oh, they're so majestic. No, they're just running from fear. They're just running wild because they're afraid of something. Yeah. They're afraid of you. Now, when you see a well-trained horse, a well-broke horse, it's a horse that has been taken by that cowboy and been presented to everything you could imagine as a trainer to confront that horse with. So whether it's a plastic bag, whether it's guns, whether it's dirt bikes, whether it's a certain colored tree blowing in the wind, like you take that horse and consistently over and over and over, you take that horse to a point to where it repatterns its mind with its emotion. So a horse has an instinct first, then there's an emotion, and then there's a story. So that horse is going to see that plastic bag, and its instinct is going to run. And then once it runs, then its emotion is fear. Like, oh, that was scary. So now the story is, I'm going to be scared of all plastic bags. So me as the cowboy, I take that horse, and through time, I desensitize it to that plastic bag, to where then we repattern the emotion and the story, to where then the horse is like, oh, I'm not scared of plastic bags anymore. So that's what you do with training horses. Now, we as humans, we're the exact same way. We have an instinct, we have an emotion, and then we have a story. Now, all of that happens to us every day, all day long, and throughout our entire life. And all of that is stored in our soma, stored in our body. It's stored in our nervous system. So like if you're ever in a situation and you get like maybe panicky or shaky, like that's your body trying to express something that has happened to you, something traumatic.
Yeah.
So with breath work, what we do is similar to like with training horses, where I take them to that scary moment and repattern that story. We can do the same thing with breath. So with breath, what we do is the whole experience is about an hour. And the first half, we do breathing that gets our body into a somatic, sympathetic state. So you breathe heavy in through the mouth and then breathe out through the mouth very intensely, like filling the chest, belly, everything, and then letting it go. And what happens quickly within maybe 5-ish minutes, your body gets into this frequency, into that sympathetic state, to where you start feeling things. Usually the things that you're feeling are sadness, anger, or happiness. And that's your body trying to express. That's it, trying to let it go. And so when you run someone through a breathwork session, you'll see people screaming, you'll see them crying, and you'll see them laughing, and sometimes maybe a few in between. And what's beautiful is they express and they let stuff out that's been stored in their body through all of those instincts, emotions, and stories that they've experienced through their life. And then the last half, we take the body into a parasympathetic state, which is kind of the wind down session. That's where you've cleared out stuff, you've let stuff go during the first half. Now the second half is where we get to go in and we get to repattern, we get to fill in maybe new thoughts, new beliefs. That's where a lot of it is. Like I'll give commands through the whole thing. I'll say like, love yourself, like you're loved, like you're safe, like what's your purpose? Like this is your purpose. Like different commands to where it just hits, like your mind and your body is in a state to where it just resonates in a way that it wouldn't resonate if I was to tell you them sitting across right here.
Yeah.
It's powerful. It's beautiful. Like experiencing it for myself and then to be a practitioner of it is really incredible. So my wife and my friends, we came up with the term Breath Work Cowboy, because what I'm doing is I'm taking you through an experience the same way that I take my horses through it.
Which is awesome.
To where you're able to let go of stuff. And what's incredible is afterwards, every single time, everyone will be like, I feel so good. I feel so clear. Or they'll be like, I let this thing out. Like I had this childhood trauma that I didn't even know was there, that I had it come out. And because a lot of the reasons why we react a certain way in life is because of a blockage that we have in our body that causes that trigger. So when someone cuts you off on the road or says a certain thing and you react a certain way, a lot of it is that blockage that's still in there that's causing that trigger. And so this breath work that I've learned has been really beautiful to be able to help people just let it go, clear it out. Because that's what a lot of people are coming for, a lot of people are doing retreats and meditation and yoga and plant medicine and you name it, because they're just trying to clear out the junk and get to who they really are and get to the center of themselves, to their core. So it's been awesome. Been powerful to be able to watch.
Yeah. Tell me the direction you're headed in right now. What are you wanting to do? Are you teaming up with your wife? Are you going to do your own thing? Like the whole fitness, and I guess this is my question for you, because I say this a lot of times too. We've had people on here with fitness, macros, health stuff. Obviously women are more conscious of their body than men are, right? I don't feel like the men, I feel like it's starting to get there, but it's not really that big for men. Do you feel like there's a space for men in this area?
100%.
Is that something that you are focusing on? Are you trying to do kind of the same retreats, ideas that your wife has implemented with males? Because like for me, right, like the hardest thing for me when I meet with fitness people, especially men that are in the fitness world, is I'm like, why aren't you running these programs for men? Like why aren't you emphasizing that, right? Like, I'm busy. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to eat. I don't know when to eat. I don't know how to eat. Like, why aren't you making this really dumbed down for people like me, where I can just come to you and do it?
Yeah.
Because when I come to you, sometimes you'll give me a macro plan, but it's like, dude, I don't want to run my fitness pal. I don't want to have to figure this stuff out. That's not what I'm paying you for.
Yeah.
Right. Like, just tell me exactly what I need.
Yeah.
And tell me what the meals are.
Can you just make it for me?
Pretty much. Right. Like, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Because if not, then it's just overwhelming, because I don't know how to do it. You're just kind of giving me an idea that I paid you for, but like I still have to implement that. Mm-hmm. And that's what I don't want to implement. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so for you, like, is this a space where you're like, hey, we're really going to dumb this down and really help everybody from a male, female aspect, couples, like what's the future for you guys?
We get a lot of requests for couples where it's like, I need my husband, like I want my husband to do this, but I
wish you didn't say that if my wife listens to this.
The hard part is men, the masculine is very stubborn. We're very directional. Correct. And we're not very receptive.
Yeah. Because we've already solutionized the problem.
Yes. Or we're going to create a path to solutionize the problem. And so we get a lot of women, like to my wife, where it's like, I wish my husband would do this with me. So we have another retreat coming up in April, another plant medicine one where it's going to be couples. Now, that's cool. We've got I think only 10 guys out of the 40 people that are going to be there. Like maybe 8 or 10 are only guys, but it's a start. So there's that. And then going forward, what I would love to start doing that I'm actively looking into is start doing and holding breath work sessions every month where couples can come in, or just individuals. Yep. But yeah, I would love to find a way to where we can heal the masculine and get guys to be able to understand what it really means to be masculine. Because for the longest time, my understanding of what it meant to be masculine was skewed. And through the course of being able, through the course of the last, we'll say 6 years, 5 years, even most recent, the last 2 or 3, I've really had a lot of experiences that have taught me what it really means to be masculine. Like, to be masculine is also like to have the balance of the feminine, to be soft, to be empathetic, to be understanding. Also, being masculine is also to be firm. And that's one thing that's beautiful that I've noticed with working with horses is you have to have a balance with both. Because if I go in with the horse with 100% masculine energy, that horse is not going to accept that lesson that day.
Correct.
Whereas I've got to go in with a balance of masculinity and a balance of femininity. I have to go in being the alpha, but I also have to go in having a soft touch. I have to go in being able to touch the horse to where the horse is comfortable. Whereas if I go in with whips and spurs and all that stuff, the horse is just going to panic and freak out and not accept what I'm doing. How many times do we do that with our kids, where we're not soft, or we do it with our spouse, where we just are very harsh or directional, and we're going in with the whips and the spurs. Like, it's not the healthy masculine way. So, going forward, as far as my plan, as of right now, I feel like I'm just trying to stay afloat, just trying to help my wife, because there's so much that she's wanting to do and wants to conquer the world. But I feel like as time goes on, there's different things that kind of comes across my mind that I feel very motivated and inspired to do. And then I just go forward and do it. And so, yes, going forward, I think you'll probably see a lot more couples stuff from us. Awesome. Is the goal. And also for me, being able to just continue to help men just understand what it means to be a man and how they can do that. Because a lot of guys want to talk about it, but they don't feel like that they can. Because then they feel weak. And that's the hard part with, I think, the stigma that we have in today's day and age. But I love podcasts and I love social media because there's a lot of great guys, like even guys like you, where you're taking guys like me and we're sitting down and talking about vulnerable stuff. And you see that a lot more than what you saw like during our parents' day and age. Like, you wouldn't see conversations like this. You wouldn't see guys talking about being feminine and masculine. Like, you just, it didn't exist. And so today you hear the word toxic masculinity. I mean, I think a lot of it is, we're releasing the toxins of masculinity that existed from our parents. And not that they did anything wrong. It's just an evolution. We're evolving as humans. We're evolving as people. And I'm grateful for like my dad and what he taught me. I'm grateful for his example and his patience, because I wouldn't be who I am without having him as my father. And so going forward, I just want to make sure that I'm a good father, a good example, a good friend, just a good guy.
I guess kind of the last takeaway here, I guess kind of my last question for you is going through this with your wife and seeing people, right? The changes that they made, the impact that you guys have had as far as adding value and really helping them out. What would you say is the most impactful thing, I guess, on both sides of the coin? Like, what's been the greatest blessing and value that you guys see out of doing this? And what's probably the greatest blessing and added value that you see somebody that came to your wife or yourself and what they were able to take back home and kind of their review or their story of the aftermath of what they've gone through with you guys?
I love that. For me, the biggest thing is that feeling that I get at the end of the retreats when I see the girls at the very end and you just see the light in their eyes. You just see the excitement. They're just excited because they feel like they're finally at home with themselves. They're finally like just present with who they are. They love themselves. They love who they are. They don't like, they're not second guessing like their personality because maybe she was teased in high school for being weird or something. Like, they finally have this light in themselves to where they love their looks, they love their mind, they love their soul. Like, they just love themselves. So yeah, it's beautiful for me to see that in person, and then to also hear it and read it in emails that come across our way. Like, I remember years ago, like, this was when we very first started, we had this one mom that emailed us and said, I downloaded your at-home workout program. I recently got divorced. I was living in a hotel with like my 2-year-old, and I didn't have anything to do. And I found your program and I did it in the hotel room. And she thanked us because it saved her. And so it's incredible to be able to have those experiences that people will share with us because they just are so grateful going forward. And then as far as like to answer the next one, the latest and newest thing that my wife is teaching is a course to be able to basically teach people how to be her. So then they can go forward and run retreats, be yoga teachers, or whatever they want. Her motive is to, as she calls it, her course is called Sacred Rebels, where we're all a rebel and we're all just breaking the mold and doing our own thing. Yeah. And all of us have our own medicine. Like what you're doing right here with your podcast is your medicine. Yeah. And what she's doing with these women is to teach them through the course of a year how to identify their medicine and then cultivate it and then gain the confidence to then go forward and share that medicine, all the way up to teaching them how to put it online, record it, just all the very simple yet complex things. That's awesome. And so it's fun for us to see that as this next thing going forward to where we're going to help people help more people.
Yeah, which is beautiful, dude. I've loved this podcast, dude. I think there's quite a few takeaways for me that I've absolutely loved, which is like you guys are doing something that you're passionate about, right? And as you go through your life, Jeff, like everybody on the podcast that we've ever had, Jeff, it's all the same story, which is you're really a byproduct of your surrounding. And how are you looking to better yourself? And how did you better self? And how do you continue to add value moving forward? You know, the reason I ask about the masculinity side of stuff is because I feel like there's a big area there where men need just as much help as women need. And I feel like the women are always out in front of the men. Yes. But they've got a little bit more time, right? Like when my wife's home with the kids, like it is about figure, it is about body, but that's been put on them their entire life. Yep. But now it's turning into the mental state, how we move forward, why we're at work and, you know, obviously trying to work on that stuff. But I love where you guys are headed because I think you're going to be able to help a lot of people and a lot of couples and a lot of problems in the 20s. You touched on your guys' just a little bit, but everybody's got to figure out how to coexist and get to where you guys are at today, which is happiness, which is purposeful happiness of where you're trying to head. And you guys know where you're headed. And I think that's beautiful because a lot of people are trying to find that, you know? So more than anything, I appreciate you coming on, kind of telling your story. I wish you guys the best because I think it's amazing what you guys are doing. The cold plunging thing, the whole mental breath work stuff. I feel like it's really, you know, taking a hold on social media right now. Yeah. So I think it's interesting for me to watch this thing evolve and see where it's going to kind of go as well. So more than anything, thanks for taking time out of your day coming on, and we're excited to share this, dude.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Cool.